HR used the words unprofessional conduct, like a stamp you can't wash off. It landed in my inbox on a Tuesday morning, copied to my director, my manager, and a generic HR address, like they wanted the label to exist in as many places as possible. Claudia from HR wrote it in that calm tone people use when they're building a paper trail. This message serves as formal documentation of a conduct concern raised by leadership. Leadership, not a name, not a person, a shadow with authority. I read it twice, waiting for the part where I'd actually done something wrong. There wasn't one. Just a vague line about tone, a reminder of professional expectations, and one sentence that made my throat go tight. Further incidents may result in additional corrective action up to and including termination. Termination over tone. And the problem was, I wasn't the kind of employee HR writes warnings about. I'm the guy managers use to calm rooms down. I keep my voice level. I keep receipts. I keep deadlines. I learned early that in corporate life, the person who stays composed usually survives. So when HR tells me I'm unprofessional, my first thought isn't guilt. It's, who needs me to look guilty? The invite had come the day before. Quick touch point regarding workplace conduct. No agenda, no context. 15 minutes blocked. The kind of meeting that looks harmless until you realize nobody schedules psych conduct calls for fun. When I joined, Claudia was there. Derek, my manager, was there too, camera off, mic muted. That alone told me it wasn't a conversation. It was a decision. Claudia smiled like she'd practiced it. Evan, thank you for hopping on. We need to address concerns raised about your communication style. I kept my voice steady. Can you tell me what incident you're referring to? She glanced down. It was reported that you became confrontational during a work discussion and created an uncomfortable environment. Confrontational. Another word that means nothing until someone attaches it to your name. I'm happy to respond, I said, but I need specifics. When was this? Who was present, and what did I say? Derek unmuted. You know exactly what you said. That line. The classic. The one people use when they don't want details on the record. I don't, I replied. If I did something wrong, I want to correct it. But I can't correct a rumor. Claudia's smile tightened. We're not here to debate perceptions, Evan. We're here to clarify expectations. Then she read the sentence that turned my mouth dry. HR is issuing a written warning for unprofessional conduct. I felt my pulse kick, not because I wanted to yell, but because I understood what a written warning is. It's step one. I forced myself to breathe out, slowly. Understood. Can you provide the evidence you used to make that decision? We have witness statements, Claudia said. Then share the summary. I replied. We don't share statements directly. Of course they don't. I kept my tone flat. Is this related to the metrics report from yesterday? Claudia paused just long enough for the pause to matter. We're not discussing project details in this forum. Derek stayed silent, and right there something clicked into place. The only tense conversation I'd had recently wasn't personal. It was me refusing to sign off on numbers I knew weren't accurate. Derek had wanted me to smooth the monthly performance report before it went to leadership. Not with a note, not with context. With edits that changed what the data actually showed, I'd said no. Calmly. In writing. Now HR was calling me unprofessional. I'm requesting a review, I said, and I want the full context included. I'm not comfortable accepting a warning without documentation. Claudia nodded. You may submit a request. For now, this will be placed in your file. The call ended with polite smiles and corporate language, but I sat there afterward feeling something colder than anger. Clarity, because the message was obvious. Fall in line, or we'll make you the problem. By the time the warning email arrived, Derek had already walked past my desk and leaned in like we were buddies. Next time, he said quietly, keep your emotions out of it. I didn't answer. I just watched him keep walking, relaxed, like he'd already won. Then I opened the HR email again and noticed something that made my fingers stop moving. The warning wasn't a fresh email. It was sitting on top of an existing thread. Under Claudia's neatly written paragraph was the subject line that had been in my inbox all week. Monthly metrics. Final approval. My heart thudded once, hard, because HR didn't write their warning in a clean new message. They dropped it onto a chain that already contained every word Derek and I had exchanged about those numbers. I clicked View Entire Thread, and there it was. My calm refusal, Derek's escalating pressure, and timestamps that didn't care about anyone's perception. I stared at it for a long moment, then created a folder called Personal Archive, forwarded the thread into it, and exported a copy with full headers. Not because I wanted to fight, because I could feel one starting anyway, and HR had just made a mistake they couldn't take back. The next morning, Derek acted like the warning had turned me into property. He didn't say good morning, he didn't ask how I was, he just dropped a new calendar invite on my screen. Another quick sync, 15 minutes, no agenda, and then messaged me on Teams like he was doing me a favor. Let's reset. I need you a line. A line, like my job was to nod. I didn't respond, not because I was scared, because I knew exactly how this works. If I wrote anything emotional, it would become tone. If I said something sharp, it would become hostile. If I defended myself too hard, it would become unprofessional conduct, continued. So I did what I'd trained myself to do in every corporate storm. I went quiet, and I opened the thread again. I wasn't rereading it for validation. I was reading it like a lawyer reads a contract. Slow, literal, and with one question in mind. Where did Derek start building the story HR believed? The chain was longer than I remembered. It went back over a week. It started with Derek suggesting a cleanup. Can we polish the report? It's messy. I replied, I can add context, but the metrics need to remain accurate. Then he nudged again. Leadership doesn't need all this noise. I wrote, if we remove outliers, we're no longer reporting performance. We're reporting a narrative. At the time, I'd thought I was being helpful, professional, clear. Now I saw it differently. He wasn't asking for help. He was testing how far I'd bend. And when I didn't bend, he escalated step by step until he could frame my refusal as defiance. Monday was the day it turned. He wrote, adjust the final numbers so they reflect expected performance. We can't go upstairs with this. Expected performance, not target, not goal. Expected. That wording matters because it's the difference between honest reporting and making something up. I replied in the driest tone possible. I can't change actual performance to expected. I can add a note explaining anomalies and the corrective plan. 2 minutes later, stop being difficult. Do it. I didn't take the bait. I'm not comfortable doing that. If you want, we can ask compliance for guidance. And that's when Derek's language shifted into something uglier. Something HR never should have missed if they'd actually read the full thread. You're being a problem. Stop posturing. Do you want to be the reason we all look incompetent? The last line hit me like a shove, because it wasn't about the report anymore. It was about isolating me. Turning accuracy into betrayal. Then came his final message that afternoon, the one that explained everything. If you keep pushing back, HR will get involved. At the time, I'd read it as a threat. Now I understood it as a plan. I leaned back and stared at my monitor until my eyes watered. Not because I was emotional, because I was irritated in the cleanest, sharpest way. He'd used HR like a weapon, and HR had let him. I could have marched into Claudia's office and argued. I could have confronted Derek in front of the team. I could have demanded justice. None of that would work, because corporate systems don't respond to outrage. They respond to liability. So I started thinking like a liability. I exported the entire email thread with headers. Then I saved a PDF copy with visible timestamps. Then I pulled the team's chat history for the same dates. And there it was, worse than the email. Teams is where people get careless because they think it's temporary, like it won't matter, like it doesn't get pulled in investigations. Derek had written, "Just smooth it, no one checks. Then, stop acting like a cop." Then the one that made my stomach go tight again. HR loves conduct issues. Don't make me go that route. He'd said it, not hinted, said it. He wanted me afraid of HR the way some managers want you afraid of performance. I took screenshots, not dramatic ones, clean ones, with date stamps and his name visible. Then I opened a blank document and started building a timeline. Not a rant, a simple, factual chain of events that would make sense to someone outside the team. Derek requested altering reported metrics. I declined and offered compliant alternatives. Derek threatened HR involvement. HR issued written warning tied to tone in the same thread. While I was doing that, my phone buzzed. A Teams message from a coworker, Maya. "Are you okay? People are talking." I stared at the message for a second, then typed back, "I'm fine. Keeping my head down," she replied. "Derek's telling everyone you blew up in the metrics meeting." I felt my jaw tighten. I hadn't blown up. I hadn't even raised my voice. He wasn't just disciplining me, he was painting me. That was the moment the situation stopped being annoying and became dangerous. Because once your reputation becomes the story, facts don't matter unless you force them to matter. I didn't sleep much that night. I wasn't spiraling. I was planning. I pulled up the employee handbook, actual policy, not training slides. Formal discipline required review of relevant communications and supporting documentation. Relevant communications, not witness vibes, not manager summaries. The record. And if HR hadn't reviewed the record, they'd violated their own process. But more importantly, if Derek was pushing me to falsify reporting, this wasn't a conduct issue. This was compliance. So I wrote one email to Claudia, short, calm, unemotional. "Thank you for the documentation. I'm requesting a formal review of the written warning. Please confirm whether HR reviewed the full email thread and related chat messages before issuing the warning, as policy requires review of relevant communications and conduct actions." Then I wrote a second email, this one to compliance. Not accusing, not dramatic, just a question they couldn't ignore. "I've been asked to adjust reported performance metrics to reflect expected performance rather than actual results. Can you confirm whether this is permissible, and if not, advise on the correct reporting format?" I hit send on both, and then I sat there, alone in my kitchen, staring at the sent folder, feeling something I hadn't felt since my first year in corporate. Not fear, a quiet certainty. Because if Derek wanted to use HR as a weapon, he'd just handed me the only weapon stronger than office politics, a paper trail that could survive the story he was telling. And in the morning, he was going to realize I wasn't going to argue with him. I was going to let the record speak. But that was just the beginning. By the time I got to my desk the next morning, my inbox was already tense. 2 new emails sat at the top, like they'd been waiting for me to wake up and choose the wrong move. One was from compliance, short, formal, and sharp in a way that didn't need emotion to cut. "Thank you for your question. We will be reviewing the reporting request you described. Please preserve all related communications. Preserve. Not clarify, not help. Preserve." The second email was from Claudia. Subject, request for review, written warning. Her tone had changed. The friendliness was gone. The confidence too. It read like someone trying to stay neutral while realizing they might have stepped on a rake. "Evan, we have received your request. Please see the relevant email chain below for context. We will schedule a follow-up." Below, I clicked, and my stomach dropped for a completely different reason than the warning itself. Because Claudia didn't just paste my back and forth with Derek, she pasted a forward that I had never seen. It was Derek forwarding the thread to HR days earlier, before the warning meeting even happened. His message sat right there, embedded in the chain in plain view. written in that confident managerial voice people use when they think they're speaking to allies. HR team, Evan is refusing direction and becoming confrontational. He is creating friction and undermining leadership. I recommend a documented conduct warning to correct the behavior and protect the team if escalation continues. I read it twice, slowly, like maybe my brain had rearranged the words. Refusing direction, confrontational, undermining leadership. He hadn't described a moment. He described a narrative, a character, me. And he'd asked HR for the warning before the so-called incident was even investigated. That was the moment something in me finally snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Cleanly. I stopped thinking of this as a misunderstanding. This was manufacturing. I scrolled further down, and it got worse. Derek had included another line, the kind that makes HR nervous when it's written down. I need this addressed quickly. If Evan continues to resist, the risk is he will frame this as an integrity concern, which could create noise. He wasn't worried about the metrics. He was worried about me using the right vocabulary in the wrong direction. My hands went cold on the mouse. I could hear the office around me. Printers, keyboards, someone laughing near the coffee machine. And it all sounded distant, like I was underwater. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Derek. Can you step into a room for a minute? We should handle this like adults. I stared at it for a long second. 2 months ago, I would have gone. I would have tried to clear the air. I would have tried to be reasonable and keep peace. But now I could see the shape of the trap. A private conversation, no witnesses, and later the summary that would become, he admitted, or he escalated. I didn't reply on Teams. I replied by email, and I replied in a way that made the path forward very narrow. Derek, I'm available to discuss this in the follow-up meeting that HR is scheduling. Please include HR on any further communication regarding conduct or reporting. Then I forwarded Claudia's email to myself again, archived it, and wrote a third email, this one to Claudia and my director. Subject, preservation of records, conduct warning review. Claudia, thank you for sending the chain, given the forward from Derek. Recommending a documented conduct warning before any review, I am requesting that all related communications be preserved, including email forwards, Teams messages, and calendar invites. I also request that the warning remain paused, pending the outcome of the review. I didn't accuse anyone of lying. I didn't call it retaliation. I didn't use the word illegal. I kept it in the language companies fear the most: process, preservation, and documentation. I sent it, then sat back and stared at my monitor until my eyes stopped moving. A few minutes later, Maya walked past my desk and paused. She didn't ask questions. She just slid a sticky note onto the corner of my keyboard and kept walking. It had one sentence written in small, neat letters. I was in the metrics meeting. You didn't raise your voice. I stared at it longer than I should have, not because it changed the facts, but because it reminded me I wasn't crazy. This wasn't in my head. I tucked the note into my notebook anyway, not as evidence in some dramatic courtroom fantasy, just as a real-world anchor. Then my director called. His voice was low, careful. Evan, I saw your email. What's going on? I'm not trying to make this bigger than it is, I said, but the warning doesn't match what happened. And the chain HR sent includes Derek asking HR for a conduct warning ahead of time. There was a pause that carried weight. Send me the full chain, he said. It's already in your inbox, I replied. Claudia copied you on the warning. She replied, all with context. Another pause, shorter this time. Okay, he said. Do not meet with Derek alone. If he approaches you, keep it professional and keep it in writing. Understood. I hung up and felt my shoulders drop slightly, like my body had been bracing for a hit that didn't land. That was the first real relief I'd felt since HR used that label. Not because I'd won anything, because I'd moved the conversation out of gossip and into records. That afternoon, Claudia finally sent the meeting invite. This time the agenda wasn't vague. Conduct warning, review, and reporting clarification. And she added names to the invite I didn't expect. Another HR representative I'd never met, someone from compliance, and my director. Derek was on the list too, of course. But what mattered was that it was no longer Derek and HR behind closed doors. It was cross-functional, documented, witnessed, a system. 5 minutes after the invite went out, my teams lit up again. Derek, you're overreacting. Then, you're making this worse. Then, we could have handled this quietly. Quietly. That word told me everything. Quietly meant without a record. Quietly meant where his version becomes truth. I didn't answer. I took screenshots, saved them into my archive, and went back to work like my hands weren't shaking under the desk. Because the breaking point wasn't rage. It was realization. I'd spent years believing professionalism meant being patient, keeping your head down, letting things go so you don't become the story. But now I understood the darker truth of offices like this. If someone decides you are the story, silence doesn't protect you. Silence just gives them room to write your script. When the meeting time finally arrived, I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked to the conference room with a calm I didn't feel. And right before I opened the door, my phone buzzed one more time. An email from Claudia. One sentence. Please do not delete anything. AITA will be placing a legal hold on relevant communications. I read it once, then again. And for the first time since this started, I knew Derek wasn't in control of the narrative anymore. He was in the record, and that changes everything. The conference room felt too small the second I walked in. Claudia was already there with another HR rep I'd never met. Older, quieter, the kind who doesn't smile unless it's required. Compliance was on the screen. My director sat at the end of the table, jaw tight, hands folded. Derek came in last. He tried to bring the room back under his control with body language alone, shoulders wide, chin up, like he owned the air. Let's just be efficient, he said, sitting down without looking at me. This has gotten out of hand. Claudia didn't match his tone. We're here to review the basis for the written warning and to clarify the reporting request. Derek gave a small, annoyed laugh. Exactly. Evan escalated because he didn't like feedback. I watched him do it, how quickly he tried to turn the room into a performance. Claudia clicked her laptop. Before we begin, I need to state, AITA placed a legal hold on relevant communications. That includes email threads, forwards, and messaging history. Derek's eyes flicked for half a second. Just half. But I saw it. The HR rep beside Claudia, her name was Sandra, I learned later, spoke for the first time. Derek, we will start with the documented basis for your complaint. You forwarded HR an email chain and described Evan as confrontational. Can you point to the specific statement you believe violates conduct standards? Derek leaned back like the question was ridiculous. It's not one line. It's his overall attitude. He refused direction, challenged me repeatedly. Sandra didn't let him build momentum. One statement. Read it. Derek's mouth tightened. He glanced down at the printed pages in front of him, then tried to pivot. This is about the way he spoke in the meeting, he said, not just email. Claudia's tone stayed neutral. The warning was issued based on your submission and relevant communications, so we're starting with your submission. Silence, short, heavy. Derek pointed at a line on the printout like he'd been forced into a game he didn't want to play. Here, where he says, threatening me won't change what's accurate. That's insubordinate. That's accusatory. Sandra looked at the line, then looked at the lines above it. What did you write immediately before that? Derek hesitated. I didn't speak. I let the paper talk. Sandra read it out loud, word for word, in the calmest voice in the room. Stop posturing. Do it. Then she read the next one. You're being a problem. Then the next. Do you want to be the reason we all look incompetent? Derek's face hardened. That's not what I meant. Compliance unmuted. Derek, separate question. Did you ask Evan to adjust reported metrics to reflect expected performance instead of actual results? Derek snapped his eyes to the screen. That's a loaded question. It's a direct question, compliance replied. My director finally spoke, low and controlled. Answer it. Derek inhaled like he was offended he had to. I asked him to present the data in a way leadership could digest. Compliance didn't move. Did you ask him to change the numbers? Derek's jaw worked once. I asked him to clean it up. Sandra slid another page forward. In your email you wrote, adjust the final numbers so they reflect expected performance. Those are your words. Derek's voice rose, sharp. Because outliers were skewing the average. That's normal. Compliance's tone stayed flat. Then the correct approach is adding context, or reporting segmented performance. Not altering the reported metric. You know that. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Claudia, like she'd step in and save him. Claudia didn't. She clicked again. We also reviewed Teams messages under legal hold. Derek's eyes widened. Just enough. Claudia read slowly, with timestamps on the screen. Just smooth it. No one checks. Derek's legs started bouncing under the table. Fast, Claudia continued. HR loves conduct issues. Don't make me go that route. Sandra didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Derek, did you threaten HR involvement as leverage to obtain compliance on reporting changes? That's not what that means, Derek shot back. You're taking it out of context. My director turned his head toward him. What context makes that acceptable? Derek tried to laugh again. It came out thin. This is insane. He's manipulating all of you. Sandra held up a hand. Stop. One word. It cut him off like a switch. Then she turned to me. Evan, did you raise your voice in the metrics discussion? No, I said. I stayed professional. I refused to change reported performance. I offered alternatives. I asked for compliance guidance when pressure increased. Compliance nodded once. That matches what we see. Derek looked around the room like he couldn't believe the usual script wasn't working. Then he made the mistake people make when they feel cornered. He tried to reframe it as personal. He's always been difficult, Derek said, voice louder now. He thinks he's smarter than everyone. He undermines leadership, and now he's trying to destroy my reputation because he got disciplined. My director's voice went colder than I'd ever heard it. Your reputation is being discussed because of what you wrote, not because of what Evan feels. Derek turned toward him, eyes flashing. So you're siding with him? Sandra leaned forward slightly. This is not sides, this is documentation. We also need to address another point. She tapped the printed copy of the chain Derek had forwarded. In your message to HR, you recommended a conduct warning to protect the team if escalation continues. That recommendation occurred before any investigation. Why were you asking HR for discipline before review? Derek stared at the paper, then at Claudia, like the room had moved without him. He said, too fast, because I know my team. I'm responsible for... Sandra didn't let him finish. You were responsible for managing performance, not manufacturing conduct claims. The room went quiet again, not awkward quiet, consequences quiet. Claudia took a breath. Effective immediately, the written warning issued to Evan is paused and will be rescinded pending final documentation. Derek, you are being placed on administrative leave while HR and compliance complete the review. Derek's chair scraped. He half stood, then froze. You can't be serious. My director didn't look at him. You're done for today. Derek looked at me like I'd pulled a trigger. I hadn't. He had. He grabbed his laptop too hard, stood fully, and for a second I thought he might say something stupid enough to burn everything in one sentence. Instead, he turned and walked out fast. Too fast to look confident. The door clicked shut behind him, and in the space he left, I felt something hit my chest. That wasn't triumph. It was release. Compliance spoke again. Evan, thank you for flagging this. We will also review prior reporting submissions for pattern consistency. Claudia's voice softened a fraction. We will confirm removal of the warning from your file in writing. Sandra looked at me directly. If anyone contacts you about this outside HR channels, document it and forward it. I nodded. Understood. The meeting ended clean. No speeches, no apologies. Just action. I walked back to my desk and sat down. People were pretending not to watch, but I could feel their attention like heat. My phone buzzed. A Teams message from Derek, sent from his phone, not his laptop. This isn't over. I stared at it for 1 second. Then I took the screenshot, saved it to the archive, and didn't respond. Because now he wasn't fighting me. He was fighting the record. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The office felt different the next morning. Not louder, not calmer, just careful. Like everyone had been reminded that messages don't disappear and meetings don't stay private. By noon, Claudia emailed me something I'd never seen HR do quickly. Subject, confirmation, conduct warning rescinded. She wrote, in plain language, the written warning issued for unprofessional conduct has been withdrawn and removed from your employee file. This decision is final. No miscommunication. No, we regret. Just removal. Final. I read it once, then forwarded it to my personal archive and saved a PDF copy, because I don't trust corporate memory, only mine. A minute later, my director called me into his office. He didn't offer small talk. His door clicked shut, and he leaned back like he'd aged a year in 2 days. Derek's done, he said, not just on leave. Done. I didn't react. I didn't celebrate. I just nodded once. Slow. My director exhaled. HR is going to keep the language vague. Violation of leadership expectations. That kind of thing. But compliance is auditing the reporting chain now. I understood, I said. He looked at me for a moment, then said something that surprised me more than the termination. I owe you an apology. I waited, didn't fill the silence for him. We trusted Derek, he continued. We assumed you were being difficult because that's how it was framed. HR shouldn't have issued anything without reviewing the full record. That's on us. I let the word sit, not to punish him, because this was the first time anyone in that building had said the quiet part out loud. But I didn't want conflict, I said finally. I wanted accurate reporting and a clean process. That's it. He nodded. And you got punished for it. Another pause. Then he slid a document across the desk. 2 pages. Not flashy. No balloons. A formal change request. My role was being moved out from under Derek's chain permanently. New reporting line. Higher band. A compensation adjustment that was written in clean language with no trial period tricks. It wasn't a movie promotion. It was something better. It was the company admitting, without saying it, that they needed me stable, and they didn't want me vulnerable again. I read every line. Twice. Then I signed. When I walked back to my desk, Maya caught my eye from across the room. She didn't smile. She just gave a small nod like, good. Later that afternoon, I got an email from compliance. Subject, reporting standards. Clarification. It was short, but it landed like a door locking. Modifying reported performance metrics to reflect expected performance rather than actual results is not permitted. Teams must report actual outcomes and provide segmented context as needed. Thank you for bringing this forward. Translation. Derek hadn't just been aggressive. He'd been wrong, and now the company had to clean up whatever had been smoothed before I refused. That's when I realized the real reason HR moved fast. It wasn't because I'd asked nicely. It was because the record created a risk they couldn't contain. A few days passed. Derek's name disappeared from meeting invites like he'd never existed. People stopped mentioning him the same way people stop mentioning a fire after it's out, because you don't want to admit how close it got. Then late Friday, my phone buzzed with a Teams message from an unknown number. A personal phone message, not corporate. It was Derek. You think you won. Enjoy it. People like you don't last. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Old me would have typed something clever, something sharp, something satisfying. New me didn't. I took the screenshot and forwarded it to Sandra in HR with a single sentence. Per your instruction, documenting and sharing. 10 minutes later, Sandra replied, Received. Do not engage. Thank you. That was it. Clean, controlled, finished. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop closed, and the quiet felt normal again. Not the quiet of dread, the quiet of resolution. I'd learned something I should have learned years earlier, but maybe I needed it to happen like this to actually sink in. In corporate life, the person who tells the best story isn't always the person who wins. The person who wins is the one who keeps their tone steady, their facts clean, and their evidence intact. HR tried to brand me unprofessional to shut me up. Instead, their own email thread exposed the person who started it. And the best karma wasn't Derek getting walked out. It was waking up the next week, opening my inbox, and seeing something I hadn't seen in a long time. No fear, no traps, just work, and a record that finally matched the truth.